to sadness from wherever you've been. Come broken hearted.
Nathan Pacheco has become a friend of mine. I've sailed with him several times now on the Momentum cruises with Go and Do Travel. His voice is incredible. His presentation is edifying. And he's hosting a trip with Go and Do Travel, Momentum Italiana, October 2nd through 15th of this year, 2025. Where do they go? They go to Milan, Bari, Kotor, Corfu, Katakolan, Greece, Dubrovnik, Croatia, Venice, Italy, Florence, the home of the Renaissance, the Vatican Museums, and Rome. It's an amazing trip. And he's accompanied by tenor Jerry Westberg and Shane Mickelson and Elaine and Stephen Dalton. To find out more, go to goanddotravel.com. Put in the code CWIC5, and create an amazing memory here. I'm really happy to bring you this interview with Nathan Pacheco. So when did you know that you had an extraordinary voice?
Well, I guess the verdict's still out on that one. Do you like my voice?
Absolutely. I say that with absolute confidence.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, I've always loved to sing, but it's definitely been a work in progress. You know, I grew up singing in church and then in the high school choirs and musicals. And then I started to dabble in classical voice lessons when I was in high school. And that is when I officially started to sound like Kermit the Frog, because, you know, if you try to, you know, before your voice is fully matured. So when you're high school age, your voice hasn't fully matured, and you listen to recordings like Pavarotti and the other three tenors. And when you try to mimic that kind of mature sounding operatic voice, it's very easy to grab all these tongue and throat muscles to kind of manipulate the sound. In your own ears, it sounds good. But, you know, as you listen to recordings of yourself, you realize that kind of sounds like Kermit the Frog. So I went through my Kermit the Frog phase. And, you know, over the years, I learned how to support properly and kind of do this operatic classical technique without sounding like Kermit. And, you know, it's been a work in progress, but it's been a very thrilling and exciting experience, because when you do get it right, when you're supporting properly and we're just able to kind of just ride this wave of emotion, and you're not thinking about technique, but you're just connecting with the emotion and the music, that's when it's a magical experience where you're most likely to connect with the audience and everything. And so, you know, I don't know if I have a definitive answer to when I know I had a great voice, but I am sincere in saying that it is still a work in progress. I still take lessons with my voice teacher in Manhattan, and there's always polishing and there's always things to improve. Some days I feel like I sound great. Other days I'm like, do I even know how to sing? Because, you know, your voice is part of your body, and sometimes you don't feel good, and that your fatigue and everything, especially on tour when you're traveling from city to city, that affects your ability to sing. And so it's a really interesting journey.
So how much of that, you know, I don't sing, but I do speak.
Because it takes the pressure off and it helps me enjoy it so much more. And I think that when we stop requiring perfection from ourselves, that's when the magic is more likely to happen. That's when we're more likely to connect with people and have that magical moment on stage.
We're going to get into that more in just a bit here. Now, how much, for someone like me who can't sing, I mean, I really can't sing. People tell me I have a good radio voice. But I'll come into a new ward sometimes and I'll say something in Sunday school, and the choir leader will say, "Oh, do you sing?" And I'm like, no, I don't sing. But how much you talk about how you are still trying to perfect your voice and improve on that. How much is a singing voice nature, right? God-given, and how much of it is nurture, what you work on?
I don't know how to quantify how much of each there is, but, you know, there's definitely got to be a certain level of natural talent. You gotta be able to carry a tune. You gotta know when you're singing the melody. And if you're tone deaf, you know, there's not really much that you can do. But as long as you can carry a tune, I don't think there's any limit to what you can achieve. As long as you get the proper training and you put in the blood, sweat, and tears, and you dream big and you take risks, I really don't believe that there's a limit to what you can achieve. I've been wanting to track down these old recordings of my voice lessons, but I haven't found them. But I would love to kind of do a comparison to show people what I sound like today, what I sounded like then.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that I'm not sure I would have encouraged myself then to go after singing if I heard myself, because I mean, that's how much improvement there has been over the years. But here's the thing is you never know unless you put forth the effort and the sacrifice in order to learn things. And that's why I think it's so important to take the requirement for perfection out of the equation, because there's no telling, regardless of how imperfect you may feel you sound today, there's no telling how you could sound a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, as you just are consistent with trying to perfect your craft. So that's.
Now you've talked about this perfectionism, and you've dealt with some tough times in your life, and you've talked about how it has held you back in some ways, maybe even in your career or in the confidence that you're going to go forward with what you're doing in this career. Sure. How did you overcome that? And then how do you balance that? Because you say, well, I still take lessons. Yeah. I'm still trying to get better. And so obviously you want to be as good as you can be. How do you balance that with saying, but I don't have to be perfect?
Yeah, man, I'm loving these questions, Greg. I think they're awesome because I think about this a lot. I think that what it comes down to is I think it's amazing to have goals, to be striving to improve. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that it has to be tempered or balanced with how we feel about ourselves in the process, how we treat ourselves in the process. And because that can be, as long as we have a healthy relationship with ourselves, if you will, then, you know, the sky is the limit. Keep on reaching, keep on dreaming. And there's nothing wrong with that. Where it gets dangerous, in my opinion, is when we start to define ourselves by our supposed perfections or imperfections. And that's where things have got dangerous for me at times in my life and in my career, where I've been so hard on myself that I have assumed that I'm not worth anything because of how much I'm beating up on myself. And by the way, as you know, we are many times a lot harder on ourselves than others. Like going back to what we talked about of how, you know, many times after a performance, it's easy to beat up on yourself. And then other people are like, wow, that was the best performance you've ever given. And sometimes it just helps. It's so helpful when people can kind of help pull yourself out of your head and your own kind of perfectionist tendencies for you to see things as they really are. And so I think that we should all dream. I think it's important and very healthy to make goals and try to improve. But it has to be tempered with feeling good about ourselves regardless, and not beating up on ourselves.
I think you can relate that spiritually too. I don't think it's just your career, right? It's a matter of, you know, if obviously I don't believe that I'm perfect in who I am and what I'm trying to be, and I have a hard time overcoming certain things. So if I'm always saying the state I'm in right now is not good enough, well, again, there's this balancing act that says, well, I want to improve, I want to get better, but I don't have to take this present time right now and say, this is who I am. Right. And I've heard this a lot, right? I've heard the definition of who you are is the sum of all your actions and your thoughts. And I've always disliked that.
Sure.
I don't like that at all, because I mean, I understand it. I understand what people are trying to say, but you're always taking away your future when you do that. Yeah. Right. You're always taking away, well, how am I going to improve? What are the decisions that I'm going to be making in the future? How can I change moving forward? Right. But that perfectionism does, I think, act as a kind of counterfeit to our identity. and who, and kind of takes away from that balance of I'm where I'm at right now, but here's where I'm going.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
I think that's perfectly said.
Yeah. Now you've worked with some bigger artists like Yanni.
Yeah.
What did you learn? I don't know at what point were you at in your career when you started working with him and going on tour with him? What did you learn about, professionalism? What did you learn about performance as you went around on these large tours? I mean, all over Canada, US, Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about yourself?
I learned so much, and that was actually the very beginning of my career. I got so incredibly lucky just right out of college. I did a few auditions, and one of those auditions resulted in me auditioning for Cwic. He's a vocal producer that worked with Celine Dion back in the day, Mariah Carey. And I was auditioning for him and his business partner in this New York City apartment. And Rick said, okay, I'm about to do this project with Yanni, and I'm trying to get him to work with singers because, that's my expertise. And so how about this? I want you to write lyrics to one of Yanni's pre-existing melodies, and I want you to sing it for him. I'm going to set up an audition for you down in Florida at a studio, and, you go for it. And so that's how it all started. And it resulted in a project that's now known as Yanni Voices. It was me and 3 other singers. And so that was the very beginning of my career. And to this day, I look back and I could not have been more fortunate, because that kind of set the stage for my career. It allowed me to be mentored by, this incredible composer and musician who had, 30 years or so in the industry at that time. I was able to write music with him, record in his studio, learn how all of that works. And then once we hit the road, I was able to, be in front of these ginormous audiences from everywhere, from Radio City Music Hall in New York to other places. And it was an incredible crash course. Don't know if that's the best word, but incredible experience where I was just immersed in everything about the music industry. And it taught me so much and helped prepare me for my solo career that came a few years after that.
Had you written lyrics before this time?
I had, but this was my first professional experience. And so, yes, I had loved writing and composing for a long time, but I had never done anything professionally. And so I kind of went out on a limb and just kind of went for it. And I'm grateful.
So you're writing the melody as well, then, obviously, at that time as well.
So he had with the songs that I did with him, he, the melody was already there. I did kind of tweak the melody every now and then to kind of fit more of like a tenor voice. But, everything was already there from the music, basically. And so it was mostly singing his melody like on the song called Adagio in C minor. It's a da 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 da. And that was the melody that was already there. And so I just kind of put lyrics to it, and it turned out to be a very fun, fulfilling experience.
How did he like the lyrics?
Thankfully, he liked them. And, I ended up working, because I wrote these lyrics in Italian, and, I'm not a native Italian. And so I ended up collaborating with a couple Italians who lived in Miami at the time. And, they helped me polish things, but I was able to put together like a rough draft and what I wanted to hear. And they're like, okay, let's, change a few things here and there. And so again, going back to, perfectionism, had I wanted everything to be perfect before I did the audition, whether vocally or with the lyrics, I would have never taken that step. But I'm grateful that I just took that leap of faith, and imperfection and all, things worked out. And I was able to learn so much about, actually, that was one of the best experiences for me as far as my vocal training, is just being in the studio, recording, and then listening to what I was doing and getting feedback. I mean, that was just as helpful, if not more, than many voice lessons, because you're like being your own teacher in a way. And so that, along with collaborating with other professional songwriters and producers, it helped me learn. And it was a beautiful experience.
So with that experience of all that touring early on in your career, what would you say makes a great performance?
For me, a great performance is defined by whether or not I feel connected with the music and connected with the audience. That's what I live for. Those are the moments where you just feel these, I'm not sure I can do justice in describing it, but it's kind of like a heavenly experience where you just kind of feel close to heaven in a way. You feel close to each other, and it's facilitated by music. And the music allows you these emotions that are expressed through the music, the emotions that kind of tell the story of our experience in life. It's neat to be able to express those through music and be able to connect with people through those emotions and kind of just, feel one for a few moments.
Yeah, I think as a member of the crowd, usually is you usually go to an event, maybe it's an event or a concert or whatever else it is. You're listening to yourself or someone else, and you sit there and you're having a certain experience.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people think about that, obviously, because that's their personal experience, but you're having a certain experience.
Yeah.
As the performer, right? You're having a certain experience with the crowd, just like they're having an experience with you.
Yes.
And that's really important. And it's to me anyway, in the little that I've got my big toe in that area, that is what wants you to keep doing it. That's what wants you to keep going and being in front of people, because it's not necessarily, for some people, maybe it is. It doesn't seem like it's necessarily the fame and the popularity and other things. That's all kind of nice, but it's in that moment, in that event, what that experience does to the person who's performing.
Yes.
Yeah. How has your mission affected your career and guided your career? You went to Brazil, is that right?
Yeah, I was a missionary in Brazil for a couple years, and it's funny that you asked that, because I loved singing as a missionary. Just like we've talked about, music has a beautiful way of kind of breaking down barriers and allowing us to it kind of creates an atmosphere of friendship in a way, and so I would sing all the time, and I would even sing on buses for people, sing on the sides of streets, and then in people's homes as would teach them. I would always love to sing for them. And it was actually in Brazil that I realized even more just how much I love connecting with people through music. And what a beautiful thing is, there I was in a country that I had never been to before. I was learning a language that I didn't know, and there I was meeting complete strangers, and many times it was through music that I was able to feel close and connected to them in a way. And it was just a beautiful experience. And so I left my missionary experience realizing, man, I just love, I love being able to sing. I love expressing myself through music. I love connecting with people through music. And so, even though I did nothing professional as a missionary, I was singing all the time. And it was just such a fulfilling experience.
Did you ever use your voice in discussions?
Oh, yeah.
Or in just visits with people?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I would not teach a lesson without at least one hymn. Many times there would be several.
Yeah, that's and then we had, I went to Mexico City, and we had
that's right.
A general authority come visit us once for a big zone conference. And he comes in and he says, okay, here's what I want you to do from now on. I want you to go in, and I want you to, when they open the door, when you knock, and we actually didn't knock, we never knocked on doors, but when you get to an investigator's house and they open the door, the first thing I want you to do is offer to sing a hymn.
That's amazing.
And that's really good advice for you. That was not good advice for me. And it was, I tried it and I did it and I just thought, you know what, the spirit is not here. I'm sorry. This is not good. This is going to slam the door faster than anything else will. But I can see how that would really be great. I mean, that would be an asset that you're going to have. There are always things as a missionary where, I mean, there's a likability issue, right? There's a lot of families or individuals want you to come to the house and just talk to them, and even beyond the discussion sometimes where you're bonding with them. Mm-hmm. But what a great asset that is to be able to sing and create that bond through music at times. And I wish I would have had that. That's pretty cool.
It really was a lot of fun, and I think that it probably played an enormous role in me deciding to pursue music as a career, just because of how fascinated I became with how, again, like I said earlier, it kind of creates this spirit of friendship. And, I've learned, and I'm still learning in life, that the most fulfilling times are when we feel close to others, whether it be our family members or friends or others, people that we just meet. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have this connection with other people. And music is a beautiful way that it does that. And it brings people closer together and causes them to, at least for a moment, to forget about differences that could potentially divide, and allows them to just enjoy music together. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Agreed. Now, in music and voice, you look up a lot to Andrea Bocelli. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what is it about him that makes you aspire to be more like him?
Well, when I was finishing up high school, he was really on the rise here in the States. And that's when he did his PBS special with Sarah Brightman. And that's when David Foster really launched him here. And I was studying classical music at the time, more kind of operatic stuff, but I was absolutely spellbound when I first heard him sing Time to Say Goodbye. And then as I listened to his other recordings, the way that he blended pop with classical, I thought was absolutely amazing, because it made it more accessible. It's like it combined the accessibility of pop music with the strength and passion of the classical tenor high notes. And I thought that was so amazing, because sometimes opera music, even though I love opera, I'll even be the first to say that sometimes opera music can sound, too pompous and too out there and go over our heads. But the way this kind of classical crossover style that Andrea Bocelli, Josh Groban, and others have made so famous is I believe it kind of combines a few different genres of music. And like many times in the verse, it's more kind of like pop and just kind of speaking. And then in the choruses, usually bring out the high notes, and they bring more of the classical technique to do that. But and that is why I decided to focus more on this kind of classical crossover genre, as opposed to going the strictly operatic route, because I personally feel more connected to it. And also I feel like other people connect with it more than just like the strictly opera.
Now, you've taken this, right? What other projects have you been working on outside of just your voice?
Well, I still love to write and compose. Recently, I guess it's been a year now, I released a musical that I composed and wrote. I released it as an audiobook, and also just released the album. So I was working on that for quite a long time, and now I am working on making it into a movie musical. And so I just finished the movie pitch, and we're going to submit it to Angel Studios and other movie studios out there. And the goal is to, take it to the big screen. And just like The Greatest Showman and other musicals, we've seen it on the big screen over the past few years. The goal is to take this musical that I wrote called Beloved. The goal is to take that to the big screen, and then eventually to take it to the stage. And so I am very passionate about writing and composing, and so I've been working on a lot of things with that. Speaking of The Greatest Showman, I heard that Disney Theatrical Group is releasing is taking that to the stage. Finally, it's going to start over in the UK, and then eventually it will make its way to Broadway here in the States. But it's ever since I saw that on the big screen in the movie theater a few years ago, I've always wanted to be P.T. Barnum. And so I'm auditioning for that, and, fingers crossed, maybe I can have some good news for you in a few weeks.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so, I've been, working on those things, working on other music as well, and preparing for different shows.
Great. Now, one of the things that you do, and you and I have been on the Go and Do Travels Momentum cruises several times together. There's another one that's coming up, and that is the Momentum Italia. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I didn't even like to cruise a few years ago. And then Brian Mickelson with Go and Do Travel, he reached out to me and was like, hey, you want to do this Italy cruise? You'll sing this Italian music, So that was pretty much the first cruise that I did with Brian. And I kind of fell in love with this experience. And then, like you said, we've done these Momentum cruises at the beginning of the year where, they put together all these neat presentations, presenters like yourself and performers. And it's just been a very uplifting and fulfilling experience. And so the Momentum Italiana cruise that I'll be doing in October, I'm so excited, actually. I was just over in Greece for another event. That was my first time to Greece, but on this Momentum Italiana cruise, we're going to go to Greece as well. We're going to start out in Italy. We'll start out basically in the Venice area, and then we'll go to Croatia, Montenegro, Greece, and then go back to Italy. And I'll be singing on the cruise ship, and I'll be singing, lots of songs in Italian, of course. And so the reason why I love these experiences so much is because I love to travel. I love exploring different cultures. I love good food. I love good music. I love being with my family. And, since I'm not bouncing around from city to city like I do when I'm on tour, but we're just kind of staying put on a cruise ship, I bring my family with me. And it's just a neat experience to have my family with me while I'm working, and to also meet great people, eat great food, enjoy good music. And so I've had a great time so far, and I'm really looking forward to the Momentum Italia.
Yeah, and you're kind of captured for the audience, right? You're with them for however long the cruise goes. And so you're accessible, and you get to spend some time with them and get to know them a little bit better. That's a great
I do my best to kind of give everyone a VIP experience in the sense that, like after shows, normally when I'm on tour, I'll have, these, sign autographs and CDs and take pictures. And so I try to give people a giant VIP experience when they're on the cruise ship so that, take good care of them and make sure that they have a great time.
Yeah. And this Momentum Italia is October 2nd to October 15th. We'll put a link in the description box for people to check out that trip and learn a little bit more. Nathan, really enjoy spending time with you on those cruises, and to finally be able to interview you. I've learned a lot about you, met your family, and really appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you, Greg. Likewise.
Almighty sadness from wherever you've been, come broken heart.